This is my 2003 E55 AMG, and I've loved these cars ever since my old shop foreman handed me the keys and the work order to a brand new one back in 2003 when I was an 18-year-old apprentice for Mercedes-Benz. Now the E55 isn't going anywhere, but it's time to diversify a little bit. So last week I revealed to you a Corvette, and this week I'm proud to show you this. My brand new to me E39 M5. Now you did read the title correctly. My 2000 E39 M5 really does have 409,000 miles on it, but don't let the super high mileage fool you. This amazing machine still thinks it's brand spanking new. In today's video, I'm going to show you all around one of the highest mileage E39 M5s in the entire country. I'm going to show you its condition inside and out and talk to you about what the previous 3 owners had to repair or replace on this car to keep it going so long. Let me just give you a little hint. It wasn't just oil changes and brake jobs. I'm also going to tell you the cool story on how this car found me and the fun adventure of driving it from Atlanta back home to Chicago. I gotta say, it's a good looking broken down car. After filming a couple stories with Mr. Ed Bolian from VinWiki. Of course, I'll also let you know what a 409,000 mile E39 M5 is worth, or at least what I paid for it, which I think was a pretty good deal. And drive-by clips are going to be included at no extra charge. Now with the M5, I currently own 7 cars with an average age of 13 years and an average mileage of 166,000. So as you can imagine, maintaining a small fleet of vehicles can get really expensive, but something you guys know is that I save a ton of money by fixing all of my own cars at home. But something you guys may not know is that I have a secret weapon on saving money on all of my internet purchases, and it's with a totally free web browser extension called Honey. Honey's mission in life is to save you money, and it does this by searching the entire internet for the best promo codes, and it automatically applies them every time you shop online. This means you get the best deal possible without doing a thing. Now I use Honey on car parts all the time, but Honey works on over 37,000 sites like Amazon, eBay, Best Buy, Walmart, and one of my wife's favorites, Express. She saved $42 on this single order alone after I installed Honey on her computer. Seriously guys, install Honey on your wife's computer and thank me later. Recently I was shopping for an air compressor for my Escalade and a new battery charger for the garage, and I saved a whopping $50 with Honey. Then I spent that $50 on some 10W60 oil for the M5. Honey has saved users an average of $28, and the best part is it installs in just 2 clicks. One here and one here. That's it, you're done. Guys, there's literally no reason not to install Honey today. It's totally free. It installs in just 2 clicks, and you guys can join Honey by going to joinhoney.com/LegitStreetCars or by clicking on the link in the video description box. Big thanks to Honey for saving me money practically every single day and for sponsoring this video. Now, the story of the M5 started when I met OJ Lopez, the owner of Fluid MotorUnion in Naperville, Illinois, and a former BMW master technician. I filmed 2 podcast-style videos with him talking about AMG versus M car and what the best budget M car would be. Many who commented suggested the E39 M5 and the E46 were the best overall budget M cars, but that the E39 particularly had a soft spot in most BMW M car enthusiasts' heart because it was kind of like the last analog M car. It was the last one that was only offered with a manual transmission, and it just has that classic BMW styling that everybody loves. To top it off, OJ told me that what got him into the M cars, what made him the M car enthusiast that he is today, is after hearing an S62 V8, the engine that's in this car, with a modified intake exhaust. He said the sound of that engine literally changed his entire automotive life, and now he builds some of the coolest BMWs around. So after making the videos with OJ, I started to get emails and messages with offers to buy other people's M cars. And then one day on Instagram, a guy named Alex, coincidentally, messaged me about wanting to buy a C63 AMG, which I own one as well. He had some questions about reliability and whatnot. He also mentioned that he was thinking about selling his, at the time, $407,000 E39 M5, the one that I'm sitting in right now. He sent me some pictures of the car and we spoke on the phone a few times, and after he told me the crazy history of this car, I absolutely fell in love and had to own this thing. So I booked a one-way flight out to Atlanta where the car was, and OJ, who was in Canada at the Formula One race, switched his flight from Canada back to Chicago to meet me in Atlanta. This is how much he loves the E39 M5. He actually had to wait in the airport for about 9 hours before I landed, and that just shows you the dedication that OJ has to a really, really fun road trip. So Alex was nice enough to pick us up at the airport. We made the deal in a parking lot nearby, and the first time that I ever drove an M car was my very own E39 M5. I know it sounds weird, but I'd never even sat in one of these cars before I bought this one. So of course, OJ and I had to find some back roads. He told me I had to feel this thing around some turns, and I'm glad he said that because I had a blast. This is my first time going wide open throttle. Wow, does that S62 sound awesome. I mean, it's just totally planted, perfect. So after having a total blast with this car on the back roads, we headed over to the VinWiki studios to film a couple of stories. Ed and I had been trying to get together on this for quite some time, and since he's in Atlanta as well, it all made sense. So I filmed a story on the purchase of my C63 AMG, and then I filmed one on this car, which should be out soon. OJ filmed 2 stories as well, and one of them is completely insane. It's about how he tuned a car in Dubai and then almost died during the test drive. Guys, it's hilarious and you gotta check it out. So after VinWiki, we had about an 11.5-hour trip back home, and OJ had to open his shop the next day at 7 o'clock in the morning. Of course, we didn't get back till 3 a.m. so I dropped him off at the shop. He slept on the couch for a few hours before he had to start work, but it could have been much worse. This is the only hiccup we encountered on the entire trip from Atlanta to Chicago. All right, we got check brake lights, although they all work. He updated the taillights back there, so that's normal, but this just popped up, service engine soon, and then within a couple minutes we got the airbag warning light. Luckily I got OJ with me. I just bought a McDonald's, so that should cover about an hour diagnosis time, right? So OJ made me bring this computer. I brought it on the plane with me, and it is a scan tool. It does BMW and Mercedes, but this was one of our most important tools. Let me show you guys while this is loading up what else we brought on this trip. All right, so here you have it. This is my $39.99 toolkit that I got from Amazon, shipped right out to Atlanta, so I didn't have to carry it. But yeah, they probably wouldn't let me on the plane with this guy anyway. But you know what? This is pretty decent, actually. I think I'm gonna gift this to my son after this. Hopefully I'm giving him a new set of tools and not a used set because we were broken down on the side of the road. But you pretty much have everything you need right here. This is actually really nice. So let's go check in with OJ and see how bad our check engine light and SRS light is.
Remember what I told you about the, on occasion you'll have an airbag fault that can intermittently come back and forth even though by law technically airbag light shouldn't be clearable?
Yeah.
Well, I think actually that's what you have going on.
Great. So it's not a seat recognition sensor like we were thinking?
It actually is showing up as everything. I'm gonna do a total, I don't know if you can see this, a total scan of the whole car.
Okay.
Just to kind of see, since that one's
I mean, just adding this up right now, it looks like we have about 80 faults.
51 faults in that might be a record.
Wow, 51 faults. What is that in?
The lamp check module.
So nice. I'm not even mad. That's pretty awesome.
I've never seen it say that high of a number. I'll be honest. I see a lot of these. So stored for the check engine light, in addition to the chuckle canister fault that you were told about, we're seeing something in here for the rear O2 on bank 2, which
okay, so it's got
not
no
a big deal.
It's got no cats.
Yeah, but it's not a
readiness
appear to be a voltage fault where it's watching the mixture, and it appears that it might be like part of the heater circuit.
Okay.
So you might need an O2 sensor.
But it's a rear O2, right?
Yeah, rear O2,
whatever.
Unmonitored, not gonna, shouldn't cause us any problems.
Awesome. What about the 51 other faults?
I'm hoping that he had a bunch of, well, I mean, I see LEDs there. So I'm hoping that maybe a bunch of stuff was plugged and unplugged at some point. These cars are notorious for keeping the stored fault information for a very, very long time. So it's possible that this stuff is just old and never got cleared. So I'm just going to go ahead and see what clears and what doesn't. And we'll kind of go from there.
I gotta say, it's a good looking broken down car. I mean, it's not really broken down. We can keep on going.
Just went ahead and did a quick clear, and let's just see what stays clear. Nothing looks like it's going to keep us from staying on the road. So I'm good if you're good.
Let's hit it.
Oh wait, there was actually one more problem on our way home, and it was all my fault because I couldn't help myself from playing with all of the buttons in the car.
Well, this is why you don't mess with the sunroof while you're driving on the highway. I'm having a little bit of an issue here. Come on. The switch is reversed, I think.
Not only that, but it's got a sticking point right here, which is typically the wind visor.
Huh. It's a good thing it's a nice day.
Yeah.
We eventually pulled over and got the sunroof shut, and the rest of the trip went flawlessly. The M5 got 23 miles per gallon on the highway, ice cold AC, and you could let go of the steering wheel at 130 miles an hour and it would drive straight as an arrow. Not that I tried that, but the previous owner told me, you know, that's the case. The previous owner described this car absolutely perfectly, and it's been a total joy to own so far. And the day that I bought this car from him, the day that I handed him over the cash for this car, he went out and bought an Interlagos Blue E60 M5 with 122,000 miles, original owner, clean title, for $7,000. Now, this car was diagnosed as having a bad SMG transmission, so the owner was quoted like 10 grand. He pulled the trans out almost immediately, replaced the slave cylinder for like 300 bucks, and he's got a perfect E60 M5. So guys, I've said this in my videos before, have your car diagnosed before you fire sale it. You could be looking at something as easy as a slave cylinder on an SMG transmission. Just the craziest deal I've heard of in a long time.
The overall condition of this car is pretty amazing, and Alex made a few cosmetic changes during his ownership. The car is lowered on coilovers and sits on aftermarket 18-inch wheels that I think fit the car perfectly. It's running a square setup, so it has 275 tires all the way around, and don't worry, I'm gonna replace the Chinese tires in the front to match the Pilot Sports in the rear. The car also has a Race IQ tune, and the mufflers have been deleted, but it still retains the factory resonator, and I think it sounds pretty good. My favorite part of the car is the color. It's called Carbon Black, which is actually a dark blue, and I think it looks the best on the E39, but although this is the factory paint color, it's not the factory paint. The car was fully repainted 3 years ago at about 350,000 miles, and it wasn't because of an accident or anything like that. The paint was just faded and worn from, well, 350,000 miles, but they did a pretty good job, and most people would never even know it was touched. The car does have a couple of flaws in the body, like this nick in the front bumper, this dent in the left side skirt, and these roof rack rails could definitely use some work, but after I fix all of these little issues and do a full paint correction, she's gonna look even better than she does right now. This car came with the optional Silverstone interior that looks like this, but I was told it was in pretty rough shape, so the black interior from another M5 with 170,000 miles was swapped in. Now, this car does have the full leather interior, including
including the dash. And I know the seats look a little worn out, but I think they are prime for an easy restoration because they're not cut or torn anywhere. So in a future video, I'm going to remove the seats and dye them. This also has the factory Alcantara headliner, and I just generally cannot wait to mint out this interior. So what is a 400,000 mile clean title, clean Carfax 2000 E39 M5 even worth? Well, I'm not totally sure, but I paid $8,000 for this car, and I am super happy about that. Let me know in the comments section what you think of the price and how much you guys paid for your E39 M5, or how much your cousins, uncles, brothers, nephew from down the street who once knew a guy paid. Now, as you can imagine, it was really difficult to put a price tag on this car because there aren't really any comparables with 400,000 miles on them, but I did do some searching online and I found some M5s with 150, 200,000 miles, not in the best of condition, not that many service records, and they were asking between $10,000 and $14,000 for those cars. So the E39 M5 has definitely held its value much better than the E60 that came out after, and I have a feeling this has to do just a little bit with the reliability of the E60 M5. What really sold me on this car was the insane service records. Guys, this was maintained at one shop and the dealership its entire life outside of Alex's ownership, and I have practically all of the receipts and records for this car, and that's why, to me, it was worth every bit of the $8,000 that I paid for it. Now, so far, here is what I know is wrong with the car. The differential is making a little bit of a whining noise, but most people wouldn't even notice. It has the airbag issue like you guys saw that I still need to figure out, but I think the check engine light is just going to need an O2 sensor programmed out and a new charcoal canister. I haven't done a full inspection yet, which is coming, but the car doesn't feel like it needs anything in the steering and suspension, and it doesn't leak anything at all. Now, the engine is not original to this car. It was actually replaced by BMW at 90,000 miles back in 2003, just to give you an idea of how much the original owner drove this car. The engine had an issue with high oil consumption, which was actually a pretty common problem on the early S62 engines, and something that I found really interesting is that if you look up a 2000 M5 horsepower rating, it says 400 horsepower, but if you look up the later year E39 M5, it's only 394, and that was because certain revisions in the new engine actually lowered its horsepower output. So the engine now sits at 319,000 miles, but that's not without some pretty major work that had to be done at about 265,000 miles on the engine. So I know this is getting a little bit confusing, but roughly at about 350,000 miles on the body, the original owner sold this car to his son. His son was a young fella and he couldn't afford the timing chain guide repair that the engine needed. So luckily this M5 got sold to the same independent Euro shop that had been maintaining it since day one. And they replaced the timing chain, the guides, the Vano solenoids, and the rod bearings, and then repainted the entire car. So they basically freshened the whole thing up and then sold it to the guy Alex, who I bought it from. Now, even though the engine had to be replaced at 90,000 miles, basically due to a factory defect, the 6-speed manual transmission in this car, which everybody tells me is indestructible, is totally original and is definitely indestructible so far. Now, we confirmed this with the shop in Tennessee who had been maintaining this car since day one, that it is in fact the original transmission. Now, it's had a couple of clutches throughout the last 409,000 miles, and the last one was done about 60,000 miles ago, and it's holding perfectly. So the only issue I'm having with this transmission is actually with the shifter itself. The bushing's totally worn out. It's basically flopping around like nobody's business. But other than that, it goes into gear buttery smooth and is an absolute pleasure to drive around. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. All right, guys, so now that you know everything there is to know, almost, about my M5, what is it like to drive a 409,000 mile car in general? Well, I'll tell you, with this one, you would never be able to tell. If we swapped out the cluster and it said 100,000 miles, you would believe it. This car feels rock solid smooth at any speed. The steering, the suspension, the brakes, the engine, everything feels practically like a new car. Now, let's just be real with ourselves here. All the suspension has been changed probably a couple times. The car's in alignment. Everything has been kept up up really, really well on this car. So quite honestly, the mileage, it really doesn't mean all that much. And when you're looking at cars and you're looking at the cost of cars, I think that there are other things that are more important than the mileage, especially maintenance. Now, some guys will get a good deal on a rebuilt title car like I did with my C63. Some guys will buy a car that needs a ton of work, but some people will buy super high mileage cars because they don't command that premium that a low mileage car does. But as long as they've been maintained, you could have yourself quite the deal like I think I got on this car right here. I mean, basically, you guys saw the car. I mean, I'm driving this car around with a clean title, no gimmicks, no games, ice cold AC for $8,000 all in. I mean, that to me is an unbelievable deal. So how does this car feel compared to my AMGs? I know that's gonna be a big one for you guys who watch my talks with OJ, and I gotta say, you guys and OJ were definitely right. This has just a completely different feel than the AMG cars, so it's kind of tough to compare them. This is really a good handling car. Now, granted, this one has coilover, so it handles even better, but you can just tell that the steering, the way this thing takes turns is just much better than all the AMG cars that I've driven of this era, and the fact that you can get a manual transmission and a factory limited slip back in 2000, that's something AMG didn't have. So you can tell that this was a little bit more driver focused, a little bit more road course focused, if you will, where the Mercedes are just kind of a drag racing machine. They're just all brute force right off the line. Now, of course, nowadays everything is kind of the same. All of these cars do everything really, really well, and with all-wheel drive, it's almost like it's unfair. Now, as far as plans for the M5, I have a lot. I want to start off with kind of restoring some of the things that this car needs. I want to restore the seats in the interior. I think I can make this thing just absolutely gorgeous. And then OJ and I have some ideas. We're going to put this on the dyno against like a 50,000 mile M5 or a really low mileage M5 to see if there's any real power difference. We're going to mess around with the intakes. It has 8 individual throttle bodies, so we're going to run those open on the dyno. We're going to change up the exhaust. We just have a ton of awesome ideas for the M5. So I hope that you guys really enjoyed this video. And if you're new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. And if you like the video, hit the like button as well. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all in the next video.